Hims and Hers reports their third quarter earnings after the bell on Monday in less than a week, and the expectations on them are pretty massive. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my earnings predictions for Hims and what we can expect from a GLP-1 perspective, but also their other product lines and trickling down to their financials and revenue and net income. Let's jump right in. Okay, so I just finished recording the Hims Weekly podcast, talking with Manuel around our earnings predictions, our thoughts around earnings. And in this video, I just want to summarize some of my thoughts and also some of the discussion between myself and Manuel in a concise video that talks about Hims earnings for Q3. You can check out the full podcast by looking at the Hims Weekly on the live stream on my channel, but also we record every week for Hims Weekly and we talk about all the new news. And on that note, with regards to new news, GLP-1s are really the main driver of this business stock price in the short term, right? On the back of, tirzepatide or whatever's going on with the compounders lawsuit or Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk, Hims will rise and fall on the basis of this news. And the most recent news around GLP-1s is actually a white paper that Hims themselves published on weight loss. And this is a 30-page report titled A Look at Early Customer Experience and Outcomes in Weight Loss for Hims and Hers. They talk about the overall market, saying that, the United States is in an obesity epidemic with over 40% of our nation's adults, which is over 100 million individuals, to be considered to have obesity, and that number to be rising essentially. Immediately off the bat, I said, wow, that's a huge total addressable market for this business, because what we do know is we know that a lot of people that are on GLP-1s, the moment they go off GLP-1s, they regain a majority of that weight that they lost. And so it is something that they'll have to consistently take some of these solutions in order to maintain that new weight. Now, Hims goes on to talk about some studies that they've done on the weight loss solutions that they have. And they compare it to other solutions in the market from a price perspective, but also from an effectiveness perspective. And if you're thinking about weight loss, there's a couple of different application methods. So they talk about the oral weight loss, which is supposedly the less effective, and then GLP-1s. And one of the findings of this report is that they found that there's only a 2-pound difference in weight loss in the first month between these two applications. And that's good news for the oral solutions, because we already knew that the oral weight loss solutions were less effective. But to find out that it's only a 2-pound weight loss difference in the first month is massive, right? Because so many people will prefer the weight loss solutions because it's an acceptable trade off for me to say, okay, I want an oral solution as opposed to anything else. And if it's only 2 pounds fewer than I would have otherwise had, then that's a trade off that I'm willing to make. Now, the second finding I think is the more interesting one. For GLP-1s, the churn is generally 30%. So 30% of people stop within their first month of GLP-1s. They discontinue their treatment after the first month. Now, for Hims, that number falls to 13%, almost one third of the industry standard. And I think that's really bullish, right? Because at the end of the day, the product is essentially the same one. The main differentiating factors, however, are the experience and the price point. And I think the price point has a huge factor to play here because you're much more likely to continue with the treatment if the price point is not as high. If I go and I take a $500, shot essentially for the first time, I might not be able to afford that for future times. And if I don't see a huge impact within the first 30 days, then I might discontinue that altogether. But with Hims, if it's a $99 subscription, then yeah, of course I'm going to try it out for, let's say, 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, because there's less of a hit to my wallet to do that on a frequent monthly basis. And so obviously that's going to be a differentiating factor for Hims to have more of a willingness to not churn after the first month. And I also think that because Hims cross sells to their people, these people who stay for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, even though they're sort of on the fence, the more that they stay with the business, the more Hims has an opportunity to cross sell them into other products, and the more they have an opportunity to go through a personalized solution and try other Hims offerings and be more in that ecosystem for longer. And so I do think that that 13% churn over the first month for GLP-1s for Hims is something that's going to differentiate them not only in GLP-1s, but it's something that's going to help them overall for their flywheel of members in that ecosystem. Now, the other news here for GLP-1s, because I think it's going to impact the earnings, is something that Manuel mentioned. So he made a post around GLP-1s now being eligible in more states. I'll throw up this post on screen and I'll read it out. He says that Hims compounded GLP-1s are now available in New Jersey and South Carolina. It's unclear when these states were added, but Hims now offers GLP-1s in 41 states across the United States, up from 36 as of September 11th, and up from 30 when they announced their Q2 results. So essentially, since Q2 earnings, Hims has 11 more states that they're available in with GLP-1s. And a part of our discussion earlier today on the Hims Weekly podcast was how the company expects nationwide availability by year end and how this is going to contribute to their year end guidance, right? Because GLP-1s are their fastest growing individual segment. GLP-1s have a higher price per subscriber. Last quarter, their price per subscriber, their average order value, if you will, was essentially $57. But as GLP-1s grows faster than the rest of their segments, their average revenue per member is also going to grow faster. Now, it's going to take a negative hit on margins, but we know that Hims is stickier with GLP-1s than others, right? And so I do think that GLP-1s expanding into more states are going to be a huge contributing factor for this business to grow faster than they would have otherwise and to raise their guidance essentially for year end. And I think Hims analysts are also noticing the same thing. We received a fresh $30 price target from Nephron Research earlier this week. And as we head into the Q3 earnings, we're plugging in some of these numbers from GLP-1s that we already know into some of our expectations. And I want to just revisit the Q2 numbers for just a second because I think it's going to be a stark contrast with what they're expecting for Q3. So in Q2, they reported 315 million in revenue, which was up 52% year over year. They reported 13.3 million in net income, 39 million in adjusted EBITDA, up 270% year over year. And they reported 1.9 million subscribers, up from 1.3 million year over year, a 43% increase. Now, the guidance that they provided for Q3 is a step change from the numbers that they reported in Q2. So for Q3, they reported guidance of 375 to 380 million, adjusted EBITDA of 35 to 40 million. And if we just look here at the forecast from analysts, we can see that they consistently double beat on their numbers. Last quarter, they were expected to do 4 cents of EPS. They came in at 6 cents of EPS. Now, I'm not sure if this is GAAP or non-GAAP. This might be non-GAAP. Last quarter, they were expected to do 301 million in revenue, and they did 315. And this quarter, they have much higher numbers than that. So they're keeping up these aggressive growth rates. And I think that a lot of that is going to be relevant with this GLP-1 news that we're seeing, right? It's going to be relevant because Hims is expanding in more states with GLP-1s and because their stickiness is so much higher for GLP-1 solutions in general. So I think it's going to bode well for average order value. I think it's going to bode well for them beating their revenue and EPS numbers. And I think it's going to bode well for their guidance that they're going to provide for the end of the year. And so essentially what I'm saying is that GLP-1 growth is going to be the backbone of the revenue growth for this quarter. And this is obviously going to trickle down to subscribers because the longer that somebody stays in that ecosystem, the more time that they have to be exposed to personalized solutions. And we know as a percentage of the total, the personalized solutions is growing the fastest as an individual segment for subscribers, right? It's growing 164% year over year as of Q2. About 42% of their total subscribers are in their personalized solutions, and this number is very quickly going to reach that 50% mark, possibly as early as Q3 earnings. Now, if we're looking at how many subscribers could they potentially add, I mean, if you just plug in the rate of growth that they already have, they're growing about 10% a quarter. So about 2.1 million subscribers, 2.2 million subscribers is within the realm of possibility for Q3. And like I mentioned, just looking at their shareholder letter for Q2, 164% growth rate in the personalized subscriptions. And what Andrew, their CEO, mentioned last quarter was that that pace, as aggressive as it may seem, is actually accelerating every quarter because really there's no real downside of choosing a personalized subscription. It's not like you pay more money, but you have something that's personalized to you. So we expect this number to be growing faster. And as early as this quarter, it could be 50% of the total subscribers. And that would be very bullish, right? Because that builds the moat further for this business and that builds the bull case further. Last quarter, 85% of their subscribers were multi-month subscribers, right? And the reason that's positive is because it's a subscription product, right? The longer dated you have these subscribers, the more predictable your revenue is. And from a consumer perspective, there's cost savings for you to have a multi-month subscription. Because of this, I think that's going to continue to increase over time. And this quarter, it could even be 90% or higher, right? So there will be some gross margin compression on the back of GLP-1s, but there's going to be more stickiness also on the back of GOP ones as well. Now, the last thing that Manuel and I talked about on the live stream was the buyback program, whether HIMS bought any stock in Q2 or not. And I don't know about this. They could have bought some stock. I mean, their buyback is approved to $100 million. Last time they added it was around $12 per share, something to that effect. So it's definitely a possibility, but I'm not really banking on this, and I don't think the market will be either. Now, by contrast, if you're talking about new product announcements, Manuel and I had different opinions on this. So Manuel thought they would announce tirzepatide in the GLP-1 space in Q3, essentially saying we're diversifying our GLP-1 solutions that we provide. As we know, HIMS provides semaglutide, and now they're going to go into that tirzepatide solution. So this is something that Eli Lilly, for example, offers. And I think that they're going to announce the menopause solution. So what we know is last week they named Dr. Jessica Shepard as their chief medical officer of hers, and she comes with a whole vast array of experience, especially in that menopause solution space. And we know that this is something that HIMS wants to expand into, especially for that HERS solution. So we don't essentially know whether it's going to be this quarter announcement or next quarter announcement. They might just be gearing up for this. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they're going to announce it this quarter and keep within that rate of announcing new products every quarter. We'll see what happens. It's probably going to be tirzepatide that they talk about this quarter as a new product announcement, and it's probably going to be menopause later on. We know that testosterone is something that they also want to expand into for HIMS, but these are probably 2025 announcements that we're going to get more insight on in the Q4 earnings call when they provide the full year 2025 guidance. For now, though, I think that is going to be a great Q3 earnings. I think they're going to beat on all their major financial metrics. We're going to be covering this earnings call live for HIMS Weekly on this channel Monday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern. That's 15 minutes before the actual earnings call starts, so we can talk through some of the numbers, and then we're actually going to listen to the earnings call together. So make sure you join on this channel Monday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to schedule the live stream probably later today, and we're going to listen to the earnings call together. Pretty exciting. Oh, a last thing I want to say is I made an earnings play for HIMS. I actually bought calls at the $24 strike price expiring next Friday, so the Friday after earnings. I might close those out even before we get to the earnings, or I might wait for the earnings report itself. But those calls are strictly from the profit of selling covered calls on Tesla. So I'm not really fussed, even if those go to zero. I'm not concerned at all. But I do think that we're going to have positive earnings. And I think that the market is starting to wake up to realize that HIMS is a real player, not only in the GLP-1 space, but actually a real player across all of their verticals that they play in. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next one. And I'll see you on Monday at the earnings call. Thanks so much.